months.
This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act and is open to the media and public. Notices were duly posted, and the meeting was advertised in the Hunterdon County Democrat and Courier News. Formal action may be taken. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Betterman. Mrs. Fiore.
Here.
Mrs. Menser. Mr. Peach. Mrs. Bogorski.
Here.
Mrs. Ryan.
Here.
Ms. Wolf.
Here.
Dr. Cecile.
Here.
Ms. Amble.
Here.
3 absent.
Can we please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'd like to welcome Judy Wilson for our board training.
Thanks
I'll
so
hand
much.
it over to you.
Good to see everyone. And can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you've had very, very long days, that you rushed in the door. Whether you've had dinner or not is a whole other story. But board service doesn't always come with a lot of gratitude. So just want to say a word of appreciation for that. And also for the fact that you have this common understanding that there is always a benefit to taking half a step back, right? You have full agendas, you have a lot of expectations, there's always a new issue in front of you, whether it's an anticipated issue or not, always a new issue in front of you, always a lot to learn and to prepare for. But when a board and when individual board members take a half step back, a little breath at the beginning of the school year here to self-evaluate, self-assess both how we're doing as a board, as a team, as a unit, and also our individual roles, right? How am I doing? How does my level of preparation measure up? How does my level of interest, do I have the energy? Am I asking the right questions? Am I understanding issues? And also, where is my voice in making us stronger, right? Because no matter where we are, 20 years of board service, 9 months of board service, it doesn't matter. Taking stock and being able to think about, it's 2023, what do we need, right? Certainly we know that the answer to that is different than 5 years ago, and certainly longer than that. And so this chance to take stock is one for reflection. You might not leave here with new answers, but I hope you leave here with new possibilities and with new options, right, for you to consider as you move forward as a board. So all that said, I also I have to say that for 6 years I've watched Reddington pretty closely as an external advisor and an external observer. And it's easy to kind of lose track of where you are. And I don't mean in comparison to other people, other districts. I don't mean like rankings. I mean the health of the organization. Right? And for those of you who have been around a few years, we've done some work on what it looks like to be a healthy organization. Sometimes we have to take stock. So I'm just going to say, external observation before we start the work of the evening. Leadership matters. Always, always, always. Your leadership, the leadership from the superintendency, the leadership from the business office, the leaders in your buildings. You've been building and building a stronger and stronger team. Consistency matters, right? You can look to districts that have had a different superintendent every 18, 24 months. Leadership, consistency really matters. You're one of the only districts in the state that has somehow, congratulations, reached a 5-year contract with your main units. And that's impressive. I don't know how you did it, but it's really impressive. And it's a great, healthy thing for your organization, for budgeting, right? For forecasting, and also just, you don't want to be in that cycle every 2 years. It sucks the life and energy out of everyone, right? You're going to look at instructional data, at student achievement data that has improved, I think, on every facet. That's really impressive. I also was able to watch districts across 4 states in their response to kids and the kids' needs and just functioning during those months and years of pandemic. You served children well. Was it perfect? It wasn't perfect anywhere. That was impossible. Changed every week, right? You served kids very, very well. So take stock, because it doesn't happen like that everywhere. So when there are good things to celebrate, celebrate. And when there are gaps, figure out why, right? And when there are areas that need to be bolstered or strengthened, figure out a way. And we're going to do some of that before our time is up this evening. So, Dr. Hart, can I just ask you to read the mission statement? And it's in your folder. So this is very low tech. You only need your folders. It's the first thing in the right side of your folder, Dr. Hart. I don't expect anybody to have this memorized.
It's on the top of our agenda too.
As familiar
That's
as
why
it is.
it's there. It's there somewhere.
So, your mission statement is what tethers all the work of the district together, what binds everyone together. So let's just start with that, please.
Our mission statement is that we empower members of our community to lead purposeful lives with integrity, to cultivate a spirit of discovery, and to embrace connections in our diverse global society.
Thank you. It's meaningful. It matters. It matters to the preschoolers in your care, the kindergartners who just joined you. It matters to your 8th graders who are recent graduates, 8th graders, and off at other high schools. And it matters to you as a board because this is what you are expected to model, This is the purpose of the district, the mission of the district, and everyone looks to you to model this, right? And to push it forward, to say it's living, it's breathing, it's not just a statement on your website. And so every so often, when you're asking yourselves the hard questions, you go back to your mission statement to say, are we modeling? Are we advancing this work? Are we living this mission? Sometimes we get, a little sidetracked, distracted, tired. You gotta get back to it, right? This is your focus. And your agendas, tonight's agenda, every month, in one way or another, the content of those agendas is to advance this mission. You've got regulations to comply with, you've got business to take care of, but there must be a body of work in every agenda that advances your mission and doesn't just take care of business. So all of that said, I'm going to ask you to think of a time in the last 9 months, so no reaching back too far, just since January, because you have been a constituted board since January. So think, I know summer haze might still be in effect here, but think about the work that you've done since January as a board. Issues that have come before you, budgets, contracts, employment, new processes, new policies. You've covered a lot of territory in 8.5 months. I'd like you to jot down anywhere, folder, scrap paper, anywhere, a point where you can look back and say, we were functioning well when we did that work, X work. Now, it might be a moment, it might be a decision, it might be a response to public comment, right? It might be monumental, it might be granular, doesn't matter. Can you think of a time in the last 9 months where you would say to one another, we were clicking on all cylinders at that point. We were functioning well as a board in that moment, in that issue, in that work. Just one example. Not perfect, but solid. Okay, so in threes on each side of your table, just turn to one another in triads and share your example, please. Jason, if you didn't do it, you just get to listen.
I think we all said the same thing.
Jody and Justina will carry the day. Go ahead.
The expectation first.
Oh,
I was going to every else to say that, so I said the superintendent.
Yeah, I know the same
Oh, that's
thing.
good.
Yeah. It was
You know what
like,
else
so
is
gets to say,
Yeah,
but there was a little bit of,
Yes.
actually respectfully Randy saying
Yeah.
he wanted something.
Yeah.
So how do you negotiate that? Like, I think that brought us all together, so mine's the same. How about you?
Good dialogue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yours is
That's
good.
a good constructive dialogue. Whether,
What's your second? I would change that.
retention and recruitment.
Oh,
I really do think
yeah.
that anything I brought to the table.
Different opinions, but then in return, so retention and recruitment was
Yeah.
really hard.
Some ways really well, and we were really
Yeah.
focused on
Yeah, I
what's
agree.
best
Yeah.
for our,
That was
what's best for the kids. is to-
Well, listen, I wrote on budget, obviously.
I know a lot more.
It was unanimous vote, so.
It was really, really nice.
That's true, though. I've notes on it, so I agree.
There was a lot of dialogue that some of them were, public communication,
It's true.
So let me ask a few folks to share your example, but also to share why. What was it that you were doing, embodying, how you were acting? What was it that made you name that as an example of a high-functioning moment in time in the last 8.5 months? So anybody start us off?
Camille.
Camille. I'm following Carol.
I like
Camille. Camille's on.
Well, what I said was when we ended negotiations, but not just ending negotiations, when I felt really good about it is when we knew as a board that we were gonna all move forward with it. So we had the conversations, we kind of did the work prior to that, and knowing what the board would all agree to, that was a good moment, I thought, for us as a board.
So
Not
there were
just
several
ending.
points in that, right? You'd done your homework, right? Everybody was prepared. You'd done your homework throughout the process. And you knew you had reached full consensus, right? That you were gonna have the support to carry this forward. Another example?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So we had that example also as well, as we discussed. And the other one we talked about was the shared services agreement with Reddington Township.
Ah,
for
yes.
Police officers in our district.
Which was monumental and very important, and I'm sure there were a lot of opinions about whether it should move forward, shouldn't go forward, in what way it should move forward. So what made that a good example?
We felt like it was something that benefited everybody, and we were able to get it to a point where it was a priority and make it come to fruition.
So 2 really critical points there. It benefited everyone. You could see how everyone would benefit, not just both parties, but within the district. And you knew you could carry it forward. Thanks. Another example? Any other example? I'm sure there were many.
We actually had the same one.
It's fair,
The
yeah.
negotiations. We thought we had really good dialogue and.
So the dialogue, right? That it wasn't just a matter of we did our homework, we knew our facts. There was genuine dialogue. A willingness at least to share thoughts, listen to others, see where it could get you. So I'm going to take you to 2 pieces very quickly. And those 2 pieces come from Fullen, his work many of you have seen before. I'm just going to re-ground you in what high-functioning boards do. So this is not in your folder, but it'll just make quick sense. Your role is a governance role, right? And sometimes that's hard to remember when you can get to the minutia or things don't seem like they're at the 10,000-foot systemic level, right? But the piece about being both a good governance individual and a good governing board really come down to some solid pillars. And we're just going to go through a little reminder of what those pillars are. You do make a commitment to good governance. Like when you run, when you take the oath, when you show up at every meeting, you're there to make a commitment to good governance, solid thinking, right? Preparation, we've mentioned a few times, open-mindedness, and definitely thinking in that big systems structure. That you're not here to be the administrator, you're not here to answer every person's wish, there are too many, and too wide, but you are here to think about the system and what benefits all. The next piece is that you share that moral imperative, that you're not here for just a few, you're here for all. And all really means the children you don't know, the children you know, the children who have the greatest needs, the children who have the least needs, the children whose voices you don't hear, right? The children who don't have advocates, the children who do have advocates, you are looking at all. And that's a shared moral imperative. And when you come by choice to serve public education, that's the moral imperative of public education, everyone. The last is that, or the next to last is that you have a governance mindset. And that refers to a lot of the examples you shared a few minutes ago, right? You have a mindset of dialogue. You have a mindset of asking the big, critical, driving questions. You have a mindset of creating policy, not necessarily that makes every person who comes to the microphone or writes an email happy, but that policy governs and you have a rationale for it. You have a governance mindset. And the last I'm going to share is that you have a unity of purpose. Now, let's just think about that phrase for a minute. That doesn't mean that everyone agrees all of the time, right, in unity. It does mean that you're very clear about purpose. And that at times you have to remind yourselves around the table of, but our purpose is not that, right? Our purpose is unity of governance with a governance mindset. And governance mindset can make it really tough in the acne and on the soccer field sometimes when the person next to you just wants what she wants, right? Or wants what he wants. You have to be able to say, but governance brings me to this dialogue, and that's different than what you're asking me about. So Fullen also is very clear about 4 things that a board has to do to create coherence. And these will sound familiar, but here we go to ground ourselves in this again. Your job is coherence making, right? You want what you're doing to make sense to the public, to the staff. You want it to flow from pre-K through 8th grade. Right? You don't want a policy in isolation. You're knitting, right? All of this together all of the time. You're making meaning for people. And in order to do that really well, you're doing 4 things. Some of which we're going to really take a deeper dive into this evening. The first is that you're focusing direction. And that means resisting distractions and distractors. And that's really hard because you're human and you want everybody to be happy, even when we know it's not possible. You're focusing direction. You do that with your strategic goals, your strategic plan. You do that with the action plans that are adopted every year. You do that when you look at data. Your job is to focus the direction. This is where we're headed. And you can tell that story, right? You can, to anybody, to any group, televised or not, this is the story. This is where we're headed. The second big task is to cultivate collaboration. Cultivate collaboration. Model it, invite it, make room for it, make time and space for it, right? But to cultivate that collaborative culture within the district so that there's room for voice, parent voice, staff voice, student voice, right? That there's room for understandings and creating understandings. Understandings aren't always agreements, right? But I can understand Carol and Carol can understand me even if we don't agree. And you're creating room to design together. Because in the best of a collaborative culture, we're making meaning together and we're designing forward motion together. What steps next? What would it look like? What's best? Can we do better, right? Is there another way? The third piece is deepening the learning. Do we know enough? Right? Are we just at superficial knowledge? Can we really take a deep dive into understandings, into information, whether that's student achievement data or new policy proposals and regulations from the state? Are we in a deep learning mode and are we encouraging that for everyone in the organization? Professional development for teachers, right? And especially deep learning for our students. And the very last job of you in this coherence making is to have some accountability, right? To have some accountability, to be willing to say, these are our budget numbers and we're accountable to them. This is what we're asking people to support with our facilities. This is what our student achievement data looks like, and we understand it, we know where the gaps are, we know where the strengths are, and we know why. Right? So we're securing accountability. When we're accountable internally, it moves us all forward. If you're just accountable to like a ranking in the local paper, it doesn't motivate many people at all, right? I had someone recently say, I'm a high school principal and US News and World Report is about to come out with its annual ranking and we're a high performing school. If we go up, I won't get many calls, but if we go down one slot, my phone's gonna ring off the hook, right? I'm gonna get emails from everyone. Well, first of all, they don't understand the rankings. Secondly, we could live without those rankings. And third, that's an external accountability, right? That high school staff is not going to be turning itself inside out to say, let's roll up our sleeves and get back up a slot, right? Because it doesn't hold meaning. Internal accountability. We can design better. We can learn better. We can teach better. So that's a pretty big task you have. It's not meeting by meeting. It's continuum. It's not success to success or failure to failure. It's continuum. Big picture, long haul. So I'm going to ask you to look at your right hand B in the right hand pocket of your folders. There's a sheet that's labeled B. And this brings it down to individual goals, what each board member really needs to take into consideration to be the best board member you can be. So I'm just going to ask you around the table to look at just 1, 2, and 3, just on the top page. The first is reserve judgment. The second is listen empathetically. And the third, which goes down below the line, is to stay focused on content. So just quickly skim those 3. So reserve judgment, listen empathetically, and stay focused on content. What makes any one of those challenging or hard? In your role as a board member, not in your role as a parent or a spouse, but in your role as a board member. What might make any one of those pretty hard? Or at least more challenging than other less daunting challenges? Anything hard there? Yeah.
Because it's really not what we think about things personally. We have to look at what we all think and what are we trying to accomplish, and that's hard sometimes to separate.
And we come as a team of 10 from very different experiences, right? Different roles, different professional worlds, different family worlds, right? And we have reasons for our views. And at this point in the game, pretty clear on our views in a lot of ways. And it's easy to get defensive, and it's also easy to think like I'm making a judgment whether you want to make a judgment or not. Carol?
Doing my stretches.
Sorry, wasn't sure. Wasn't sure. Didn't want to miss that. Okay. So, now I'll know.
Sorry.
So reserving judgment, right? To hold back before you start to say, but, or no, or wrong, or, you're crazy, right? To hold back. Maybe you won't agree, but you'll understand from whence it's coming. What else might be challenging in these first three? Jody?
I think listening sometimes is very challenging because if you as a board member feel strongly about something, you're wanting to put your opinion out there and you're so focused on that, sometimes it's hard to listen first before you put your opinion out there.
And it seems stressful and demanding sometimes, and it's hard, one thing to be quiet and another very different thing to listen empathetically. So just to give somebody time doesn't mean you're listening, and it certainly doesn't mean you're listening empathetically. That's a pretty high bar. Anything else that makes it challenging when you think about in this role of good governance, reserving judgment, listening empathetically, staying focused on content?
I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, but I'm thinking in our role, in our governance role, we have a lot of set, either policies,
Yes.
things dictated from the state. So
Boundaries.
a lot of boundaries. So it's sort of this, whether you agree with those or not, leads to, you're just,
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to explain it.
Well, I think that what you're saying is that, you feel restricted sometimes, either by Open Public Meeting Act or by rules and regulations or by personnel laws, right? That there are things that you find, but I know that, but I can't say it, right? And you have to find another way to, first of all, engender trust, and secondly, have people understand. So the next two, always be true to the norms of the board. Now, there are boards that have very, very specific norms that, when you take your oath, in addition to those factors of your New Jersey oath, you are also introduced to, this is how our board functions. These are the norms. This is how we do things around here, right? This is how we make work happen. And they're very specific about what's out of bounds and what's expected. But you know that from the culture of the Reddington board. And it is up to you to hold that standard and hold each other to that standard. So it's one thing to say, I'll come to the table and I'll adhere to these norms. And I don't want to be responsible for anyone else. But it's another thing to say, we're all responsible for how this board functions, is seen, the reputation of the board, right? And what people come to expect of us. It's like the old slippery slope, right? Once we don't object to someone else's behavior, or once we let our own behavior slide, if it's not called, it can be the slippery slope. The last piece is hard, to not take it personally. But this is a very professional role. People will disagree with you. People will think you're not a good board member, maybe at some point in time. When you have your rationale and you're clear about the norms and the way in which you are interacting, sometimes people won't agree, that's okay. But you can still say, I acted within the norms of the board. I behaved well. I modeled for kids. I'm not going to get in the car and say, I can't believe I just did that. Now, the last one is sticky, and we're going to talk about it when we look at your survey results also. So just sit back and listen for a second. If all else fails, after many attempts to accommodate the views or behaviors of a given board member, It's important for the board to move forward in fulfilling its governance responsibilities. That's hard, right? That's hard. But your greater calling is in fulfilling your governance responsibilities, even if you're not able to bring everyone along. It happens. It happens especially 2023 in times of conflict, in times of polarized views, right? This is reality. You do your very best to stick to the mission, the moral imperative, what's good for all, how it matters to our children, where it moves us as a district. And if all else fails, and you're moving forward without one board member or two board members, it might come to that. But you have to ask yourselves, have we understood? Have we reserved judgment? Have we listened empathetically? Right? And do we have our rationale? Right? Do we know where this is going to take us? It's not about drawing lines. It's about doing everything you can to understand one another with a unity of purpose. And if there comes a point in time where it's just time to move forward, it's time to move forward. That's good governance. Right? That's good governance. We are going to talk a little bit more about that. So that's your grounding. You were all great enough to complete a self-evaluation. And you know that New Jersey School Boards asks you to do some type of self-evaluation as a board. It'll be on your CUSAC questionnaire, I'm sure. It's just good practice, right? Whether you're the town council or the school board or trustees on a private for-profit board, it's really good practice to do a self-evaluation. And the brief questions that you responded to were taken actually from the New York State standards. And they were grouped into 5 areas. And just as a little refresher, you can look back at those another time, but the 5 areas were 1, around vision. Do we have a vision, mission? Do we know where we're headed together and not just paying the bills? The second, around board governance and policy. So often you think, I wish we had a policy about that, and you find out it's not there, and you go to work on one. Communication and community relations. You know, you can be doing everything like in model form and fall on communications and community relations, and nobody knows the good work, right? Nobody knows the story of your work. Nobody knows where you're taking the district, right? So doing the work is one big piece, but making sure that it's communicated well and that there's give and take and input with the community is critical, or else you're just sort of doing this in a box, right? And nobody knows what to celebrate. The 4th area was on fiscal resources, the environment, which is really your facilities and your big picture environment, and staff recruitment, which is getting harder, we all know, in the last couple of years, but the importance of your children can only learn as well as the people who are in front of them are learning and teaching. And the 5th, under ethical leadership, which is, you know, not a term we use all the time. You know, you take your code of ethics, you read it once a year at a board meeting, usually reorg, right, Jason, is when you do your code of ethics. You read it publicly, acknowledge it, live by it. You know, the code of ethics is the kind of thing that we don't use as a tool until we're in trouble. And we have somebody that's way out of line, and we go to the code of ethics to say, we got to get back and adhere to this. So they were your 5 areas. You were able to individually and anonymously rate them as highly effective. This is how we've been, at least since January, right? Highly effective, effective, Developing. Now I'm going to say, developing is not a bad thing. It means we've got work to do, right? And then ineffective, a bad thing, all right? Ineffective. So when we look at a rating that's ineffective, somebody feels really strongly about that, and we want to be able to understand why, right? And dig a little deeper into that. So I went through all of your responses. You have the raw data, but I'm going to ask you to turn to a summary, right? So the summary is actually E. It's the last page on the right. But I did want everyone to have the raw data, and you have that on the left. So this is going to take, I hope not a leap of faith, like an inch crawl of faith, to say that I went through and analyzed this data for you, for us to be able to discuss and think about your next steps. So here's the great news. You know, the great news is that around this table, you identified many, many strengths, right? Many strengths. Now, a person or two might have said developing, while 6 said highly effective or effective. That's a strength, right? When it was a range, just explaining my rationale, when it was a range, you know, 2 highly effective, 1 effective, 2 developing, 2 ineffective, that's where I went, like, hold it. You know, we've got a little work to do, or at least some questions to ask. You might not choose to do work in that area, but you know, you want an understanding of why this bubbled up that way. So you have this list of identified strengths. And you know, I'm here to say that's a lot of strengths that were identified and solid as can be. But we're going to spend our time on what didn't bubble up to be a strength. And it doesn't mean that there's a fire, doesn't mean there's chaos. It just means that, gosh, there were a couple of people for each of these responses who couldn't get to effective, right? Or maybe even to developing in all cases. So you'll notice on page 2 that there were 5 areas, and I put in bold 3 of them because, again, I took great liberty and just thought to myself, these are the 3 that matter more than the others, right? As a board, as a high-functioning board, which you are, these are things that we should talk about more than the others. The first one was monitoring progress with data-based information. It was a pretty widespread, all right, what people. So it makes me wonder, do we know what data-based information is? What data-based information, right? Usually we're talking about student achievement data-based information, which really comes in the form of your standardized test scores or benchmarks that you've set across the district in mathematics or science or language arts. The second, bold, board members publicly support the decision of the majority. This is a struggle. It's a struggle everywhere, right? I feel strongly about something. I didn't vote the way the rest of the board voted, but I'm still on this board team, and this team's on a bus that's going down that road. And you know, I may not be a happy camper about being on that bus going down that road. But I've made a commitment. So we're going to talk about that also. And the third, the board works with the superintendent to gain input from the community. This was a wide range also. No one felt like the board was not working with the superintendent or like there wasn't any input from the community. The question was, what more might we want, or in what different ways would we look for input? So we're going to spend the rest of our time together thinking about those 3 areas. And I'm going to ask you to think about what each one would look like in the ideal. Right? What more or different would you like to see? So we're going to give this some thought time first, and then some discussion time, and then our hope at the end of the hour here or so is to be able to say to Dr. Hart, these are things we'd like to consider, right? These are things we'd like you to think about with us in the next month or two. Fair enough? That means all voices have been heard, we've analyzed this, we've had time to let it simmer, but we also have given time for some definition, and we've generated ideas around the table. So I would like all of us together to think about the data-based information. But first, I'd like you to think about that individually. So start to make a little list. You might think of one thing, you might think of 5, but in an ideal situation, over the course of the next year, what might that look like to you? And what is already done that really is meaningful to you? How do you work already with data-based information that is meaningful? Right? I think you're going to see some of it tonight in the presentation. But is it enough? Is it the right content? Is it timely? Is it understandable? Right? What else might you like to see? What might you like to do with data? What would matter to see you all get to effective, highly effective, when you talk about dealing with data-based information, monitoring progress, data-based information? I'm also going to say to you that you always want to be looking over a 5-year arc, right? So take an easy example, staff attendance. Easy example, right? What did it look like 5 years ago? Oh, maybe it was only at 92% and you want it to get to 96%, right? What did you do? Was there an incremental change? Are you going in the right direction, right? But you want to look over time. You never just want to look at 1 year in isolation. So always be collecting this data in a 5-year arc. So make a couple notes to yourselves. What would it look like? What would you prefer to see? What do you think could be done in a different way or a better way that would make you as a board around the table? Now you might say, I think it's all perfect and we do what we need to do and it's enough. Fine. But you'll have a reason for saying that if that's the case, right? So just think about that for a couple of minutes before we move forward. What could be different? Not necessarily more, but sometimes it's more. Sometimes it's more frequently. Sometimes it's next layer of data. What would look different? In order for you to say, I think we are hitting it out of the park when we think about using data to monitor student progress. So what are a couple examples of the ways you currently monitor student progress with data within the district or at the board level? We're all gonna look at Dr. Hart to answer that question. But what are some examples, Jonathan, of how data currently is used in the district?
So we collect our iReady diagnostic data 3 times a year in math and language arts. And the data is reported out to the full board at the beginning of the year in October with NJSLA data, WIDA access for Ls, and the DLM data as well. And then around February, January, when we do the second round, we then report the diagnostic data, second round and growth to the Ed Tech Committee. In the past 2 years, the supervisors have come to that February board meeting and also reported out to the full board in terms of the first half year growth.
Mhm.
We get to the end of the year, it gets a little hairy, right? Because the last diagnostic assessment is given in June. The board meeting is usually done and we're waiting for NJSLA for the following year. So by the time we have end of the year data, yes, the administrative team is using it to make placement for G&T or intervention for the following year, but the board doesn't yet see all of that data until the October of the following year.
So there's a cycle, and
Yes.
our new board members haven't seen the full cycle yet.
Yeah, so there is a cycle that comes back every year. I'd like to think, and the board can certainly shed light on this too, that having the principals come to the October meeting where they'll report out, this year they'll report out some of their findings of their focus area for the building from last year and how it went, and then they'll set new focus areas for this year. They're part of the conversation in October with the full board, and that's relatively new. We did it last year and we're going to augment it a little bit this year to enhance it. I'd also like to think that on board tours that there's evidence when the board tours around in March that you see some of the stuff we talk about here at the table happening in classrooms or on tours with the principals, that the data is being used, the data conversation chart that we've talked about is being implemented in teachers' classrooms, or at least when they walk into a classroom, the board members can see that the teacher kind of walks them through, this is what we did, this is why we're doing a small group. I mean, that happens sometimes, not all the time, but I think it mostly happens in Ed Tech, though, not with the full board. That would be my assessment.
And this might seem very familiar to some of you and a little foggy to others, like, I haven't seen that yet, or I don't connect those dots yet. I do want to mention that no goal should be based strictly on a test score, right? You're looking at data and evidence, right? Data might be a test score. Evidence is what we're seeing in our students' essays, in their benchmark assessments, in their teacher feedback, right? So you're always looking at being able to collect evidence and data. And don't turn yourselves inside out over a, 0.4 points of a data shifting in a different cohort every year, right?
Judy,
What
one
else
thing I would
would-
add too, that the board, just thinking about what they don't see, and I'm trying to think about a way to make it more transparent to the board, is the conversations I have with the principals about their administrative goals, except in my evaluation where you see the template for administrative
Mhm.
goals, it's hard to convey that because it's a personnel matter, right? It's between me and them, it's part of their evaluation. So how can I make that more evident to the board that the principals have their eye on this and they've developed goals with my approval, and the supervisors as well, so that's one of those things that maybe,
It's alignment. right?
Yeah.
So you want to know that the board goals
Yeah.
with student achievement flow all the way through the system.
Yeah.
Teachers, supervisors, principals, that's aligned, and that's the superintendent's responsibility to make sure that that's aligned. So what else would this look like? What else might you think you as a board or you as the Reddington district might make more public or transparent or just follow more closely? What would help each of you get to the point where you thought, we do a really good job of understanding student data?
Well, I agree with what Dr. Hort said. What I liked about what we did is we actually talked about this process, and a couple of years ago, we weren't having principals come in, but it was nice because we set a goal and we accomplished it, we had them come in, and it just made it brought, I think, I just thought it was a nice addition to the presentation. But I think the district does an excellent job putting these PowerPoints together, and it's very nicely presented to everyone and explained. I also like the way there's a comparison from last year, the prior year, which I think is very helpful too, when you're looking at the data. And so I think it's a clear presentation. My thought as a weakness might be that I think more parents really need to receive and hear this information, and maybe in some type of written way, whether it's through email, because then you have time to process it. And what I also like about the way the data is presented is it's broken down into various categories. So you see, you know, the differences between ages and gender and special ed is separated out. So there's a lot of different categories, and that's all helpful information. But it's a lot to gather at one, just sitting here and seeing it. So I think maybe if we had, this in written form, maybe afterwards we can process it and really absorb it, and then definitely share it with the community, because it's a lot of good news, really.
Good recommendations. Thanks for starting us off. What else would you like to see, have happen, better understand? Anything, Carolyn?
I'm afraid as soon as I start speaking, I start coughing, but.
Oh,
And
would you like water?
So one of the things that I always question when we do the data dumps, or the presentations with all the data, most of the time we compare it against state results. And I would really like to see us compared against districts that are more like us, whether it be in the size of the school or the size of the community, the cost to educate per student, comparable demographics, because I think we would learn a lot if we would compare ourselves against,
Peer
people more
districts.
peers as opposed to the state as a whole. And I know that it's not easy to get, the data isn't given to us that way, but maybe we can work on some way, figure out how to do that. Whether it's, speaking with some of our peer districts and sharing data.
And it doesn't have to be exhaustive of that list. You could select 6 districts from across the state, right? They don't have to be in the county either, but 6 districts that you just say, we could have picked 12, but we picked 6, and we have a pretty good rationale for why those 6, and we're just going to, in general, kind of, gauge. We're not ranking against them. We're just going to gauge, because if all of a sudden 2 of them go, and we don't, to the northeast and climb, and we didn't, or there's a new test or a new set of standards, and they mastered it and we didn't, we know who to call, right? That's what it's about. It's not about like we didn't do as well. It's like you want strong peer groups so you know, what are you doing? What was your professional development? What programs are you using? What were your expectations in the classroom? How much time do kids get in 7th grade mathematics in your district, right? You want to be able to ask, and so you don't want 12 or 15 districts. You want a good half dozen that are strong peers, and always a couple that are, reach. You want to reach. Anything else that would help you feel more solid or better, more conversant with, or better aligned with the data?
For me, I think it would be interesting to also see if we have data, say, from 4th grade. iReady stats, what was 4th grade like 5 years ago? Like, how have we grown, or is it?
Yep, so sometimes the assessments don't change so much that you can follow a cohort, or you can follow 4th grade to 4th grade, understanding that they're different cohorts, but you really have to know assessment to do it, right? In New Jersey, it's very hard to get the same set of standards for the same test for more than 2 or 3 years, but there are pieces you can follow. Thanks. Anything else?
I just had one thing, and everybody's heard me say this, it's not new to them, but it might be new to you, is because we don't have a high school, I feel like there's a gap there and we don't get like a true longitudinal study of our students when they leave here and what I'm assuming is great success in subject areas in the high school. Maybe staff get that level, but I feel like we as a board don't get that level of information to know how well prepared our students are for whatever high school they choose to go to.
But especially Hunterton Central, as the majority of your kids, I mean, it's very hard to track into a private school or into a different setting, but the majority of your kids, more than the majority, are going over to Hunterton Central and getting a great education. And so to think about that articulation, you know, in a regional high school district, we make a point of not differentiating, like, oh, you're a Reddington kid, you can write well, right? But that's a conversation, right? That articulation. All right, let's shift. You are going to have those epiphanies at 2 a.m. or as you're driving home 3 days from now that might make you come up with an idea that would say, like, just what if we? And if you have that thought, you know, send it in an email either to the full board and Dr. Hart or to Dr. Hart and just say, like, what if we, you know, I was wondering, what if we? Not that you're saying do it or getting into really low level, but just like big picture as a board. What if we had, what if we did, what if we were able to see trends, whatever.
I did take notes.
Yeah, I was counting on that, I was watching.
Yeah.
I was hoping it wasn't your grocery list, okay.
I promise it's not.
Just checking there. All right, let's skip to the gaining community input. So, you know, first of all, this communication is always 2 ways. And it's easy to say, you know, all these newsletters go out and all this information and it goes out in multiple formats and we live stream our meetings and we have, I'm gonna say open mic, right? We have opportunities for public comment and all of these pieces. You can email the board. We control the push out, right? How many, do we do podcasts? Do we use social media? Do we depend on a branded newsletter? All of those pieces. Emails from the superintendent and the principals. Push out. This question was about community input. And so, yes, you can get input by the people who email the whole board. You can get input from people who come to a meeting and raise an issue at the microphone or ask a question. But there was a wide range of responses on this. So we want to think about what would you like to see considered, right? All these things don't happen next month, but in the arc of the next year, what might you like to see as an input stream or an input opportunity? What might that look like? So think to yourselves about those possible opportunities. And I'm also going to say that input opportunities done well and in a targeted way matter a whole lot more than just multitude of opportunities, right? So when you come to the point of making decisions about, we're going to try this path for more input, whatever that is, think about doing it well with a targeted reason or a targeted topic as opposed to more. So what might it look like? And maybe you've had experience in other organizations or other community groups or professional groups where you've been able to give input in a way that was productive and you'd like to see that happen within the school district.
Can I add a thought?
Please.
One of the most powerful things I think for me, when we were doing the principal search at RMS, I sent out a survey to staff and to parents grades 5 through 7.
Mm-hmm.
of these are the qualities of highly effective principals. Rank them in order of your importance. You know, what do you think Readington Middle School really needs? And we use the first 2.5, 3 hours of our interview session to craft questions around what we felt was important. I found it incredibly powerful, but I think the community probably felt like, well, what did he do with that input, right? Like that's where, you know, like,
Right.
yes, we found a building principle, right? But what did we do with that input? It kind of dawned on me, I feel like that's like a shining moment of how we got some community input that really impacted the decision in the district.
Like closing the loop,
How can we close the
Yeah.
loop better?
right? So closing the loop is a great question to always ask ourselves as governing board members, right? Because you see it up close doesn't mean that we've told the whole story to the community, right? And it's often that last, like, whatever, third of the loop that has the punch, right? That has the greater meaning that we like either assume people knew or that we're watching. I mean, I have to tell you, in my local community, I care a whole lot about what happens in the public schools, but I don't watch the board meetings. So, you know, we can't make that assumption. So
The thought,
your
like,
one
yeah.
point about closing that loop,
Yeah.
and the other is that was a good example of a very specific, we want input because we're gonna make decisions, and we're asking you up front. So what else might better or different input cycles or streams look like?
I saw on the district goals presentation that I was happy to see a climate survey coming back. I think that's something that is great for input.
And more and more. First of all, our climate survey tools are getting better. And secondly, the need to give them is deepening, right? Our kids have a lot to deal with and they're coping with a lot. And we've got a lot of alarm bells going off all over the country. And so being sure that we don't miss on climate and culture surveys is very, very important. Well, that's one input and it's from your students. And maybe, I don't know, do you do staff?
Parents and staff.
And staff and parents, great. So 3 streams coming in. What else might different or better input look like?
I think the challenge, if it's not something specific, is getting the engagement. I
Yeah.
think that's something that we've struggled with for years. If parents are happy, if the community is happy, then they trust what you're doing.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
getting their engagement on a regular basis is a challenge.
And people get tired of surveys too, right? There's like survey fatigue, so we have to be careful how many we send. And it's not a bad thing to say, you know, this year you're going to get 3 surveys from the district. And I know it up front, I'm gonna get 3. So when I'm on 3, I'm done, right? And I'm willing to do 3, but I'm not willing to do 13. And so that's another, like, to say up front, these are your opportunities. This is how you give input to the district. This is how we collect feedback. I'm also going to say that I think a lot of districts are getting very good at using focus groups, student focus groups, middle school, upper elementary, staff focus groups, parent focus groups, where it is one time, one topic. I'm asking you, are you able to join in? And we'll do it virtually. You don't have to leave your home. But focus groups are pretty effective if we're just looking to collect some good information coming back to us. All right, so it doesn't always mean more, but it sometimes means different, more focused, and giving people the expectation up front. Your children are going to have a climate survey, you are too, really helps us to look at these together. All the kids will take it. Can we get half the parents to take it? Half is tremendous, right? 30% is great.
How do you combat that people who provide input usually are the people who are upset not happy with the status quo, and people who are happy are quiet.
Mm,
And it creates a
different tension and a
yeah,
skewed, a skewed view.
bias, or like, a
Yeah.
confirmation bias.
Yep.
That might not be, true of the population as a whole.
Yeah.
How do you engage both sides equally to get a better representation?
I think that the best way to do that, and I'm not a statistician by any means, but, is to test your results. So you're not just giving a survey. You've got a survey, you have focus groups, and you have targeted, like, 30 calls to people, right? That you've got more than one way to test somebody, to test the greater community's opinions, and not just one. Because once you can do that, you begin to say like, oh, this was really skewed, but these other two streams are showing us more balance, right? Or we can balance that skewed survey with these other methods of input. I think that's the best way, especially in high stakes topics, in really high stakes topics. I would also really encourage always that surveys have at least one or two open-ended questions so that people can say, like, this didn't ask me how happy I am, and I want to tell you I'm really happy, right? Or this didn't ask it. Always an open-ended box. All right, the last topic is the stickiest, and it's the hardest, and it is what happens when we haven't reached consensus. What happens when we have to move on as a board? You cannot spend a school year or a board governance year plugging away and hitting your heads against the wall, hoping that one or two or three people are going to come along when you feel all of the information has been gathered, all of the information has been shared, right? We've had dialogue, we've listened. There's a time where it's like, call the vote, call the question. Now, I will say that building consensus is different, right? When you're really, really trying to build consensus, you can and should ask each other, and this is usually the board president who does this, right? You really can ask the questions of, around the table, can each person, before a formal vote, in discussion, can each person identify where they are in their thinking right now? And some of you have used this consensus building technique in other ways, but you're able to say, I'm a champion, I'm an advocate, I'm all behind it, right? And this is a range, all the way down to, it's acceptable, I can live with it, might not be enthusiastic about it, but I can live with it. I don't agree with the decision, I need to register my view, I'm willing to support and trust the wisdom of the group. My preference is to continue our discussion, or I have to stand in the way of the decision, right? That's this range of getting people, like, test the waters with each person around the table, right? I'm there, I can move forward. I'm not there because I need more information, or it hasn't been explained well enough to me, or I have a question still, or no way, we could be here till, 2030, not budging. Okay, fine, we know where we are, right? And we know why, right? Not just where we are, but why. So when you're in the middle of trying to make those hard decisions, and you're trying to get a unity of purpose, and you're trying to move forward, understand where people are before you go to that, like, it's vote time. Once the vote has been cast, the board moves forward on the district mission, whether it sticks in your throat or not, right? Whether it makes you squirm or not, whether it makes you uncomfortable or not, whether you'll say, I will never, ever agree, you're part of a board. Was
we're the board team for 19 years, and there were times I had to say, like, Judy, I know you don't agree, but you're not queen. You're on a board, and you're at 1 of 10. Sometimes you just gotta go to the next body of work. And that's boardsmanship. That's good word, good boardsmanship. That's boardsmanship. So that was our agenda for the night. In response to your surveys, look at the surveys. There might be something that you want to go back to, or you say like, oh, I really wish this hadn't been listed as a strength and we should look at it. I think that there were 2 questions that were neither strength or a need. One was the ethics. It's like you either do it or you don't. So it was really a yes, no. And one was the audit committee. And I think if there are questions about how the audit committee works, Jason's your go-to guy, and he'll give you the deeper understanding so that you're ready when you go into audit time. You've been, auditors have already been in?
Have been here, we have our feedback, we moved on.
That's the beginning of the year.
Yep.
Audits.
But they'll get, it's an annual, it's always
Yeah.
presented in December.
So you're in this cycle now for December. So if there are questions about how the audit committee functions, you know, Jason can give a little tutorial just so everybody is really clear on that. Well, thanks for your engagement. I hope there's something to think about. I think you as a board have some actions you can take in terms of becoming stronger in your governance. But I think they're all, as I said earlier, they're all signs of a high functioning board. They're not signs of weakness or struggle. Right? They're just signs of we're really professional people who believe in continuous improvement. So thanks.
Thank you, Judy.
All right, okay. Have a good meeting. You're gonna see some data, I think.
We usually do.
Yeah, well, next meeting's date.
month.
Next meeting.
That's a good job.
Keep going. Plow through or?
Does anybody need a break? Okay.
Steamroller, okay.
Yep, let me get down your
I'll get to district goals in a minute. But just to bring you up to speed, we opened school last week.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we did, right? We opened school. I want to tell the board that this past week has been very successful in the opening of schools for the 23-24 school year. On September 5th, we welcomed staff members back with a celebration here in the Hollenberg cafeteria. Some of the board members came. We included welcome addresses, awards for those achieving tenure, gifts for those attaining years of service in the district, and staff also received a wide variety of different professional development and training over the course of the 2 days. And then teachers also welcomed students on open house days, which was the following day. They introduced new students to their classrooms, so we had a really great welcome back day. Some board members were there. Thank you, Jody, for just saying a couple words to welcome back the staff. I think it was nice for them to hear from a member of the Board of Education that before. And then students returned on September 7th, and it was like they never left. It was fantastic. They settled in quickly. As I walked around the buildings, they were doing introductory activities with their classmates and their teachers. A lot of classes were on the tour of the new school buildings, learning how to open lockers and much more. Lunch service went smoothly, even with the new lunch system. There were some transportation delays. On the first couple of days of school, the school secretaries were sure to reach out to parents. for any significant delay of the buses, or we sent Genesis blasts out. So school is up and running successfully with, at last count, a total of 1,402 students. At this point, teachers and staff are getting to know each other, hosting back to school nights, doing picture days, reviewing NJSLA data, preparing for the iReady diagnostic, developing building and administrative goals, preparing for QSAT, a little bit more on that later, starting fall athletics, and much more. So all in all, the feedback on the start of school has been very positive. I want to say, as far as emails that rose to my level, or questions that rose to my level, maybe one transportation concern was the only thing that I had in my inbox after the first day of school. So that's a little barometer of how the first week of school is going. Any questions or comments on returning to school for the board? Okay. All right. District goals. So I prepared this presentation on, or posted it on Friday for the board agenda prior to us doing this exercise tonight. So I welcome at the end of the district goals presentation for this year comments and feedback in terms of some things that you might like to see, or some additions or revisions, and I have some other ideas, that I'll talk to you about. But yeah, so this was prepared in advance of Judy Wilson being here tonight, so just keep that in mind as we walk through it. So I always want to focus our annual goals back to our mission and our strategic plan. I think, and I like to start with a quote as well. I like this one: before anything else, preparation is the key to success. And I think that our district goals for the year is a way for us to be prepared. And in order to be prepared for the year, this really does help us set up for success so that we can remain focused, so that we know what we're driving for, we know what our mission is, at least for this year. You heard me read earlier tonight our school district mission about empowering members of our community to lead purposeful lives with integrity and cultivate a spirit of discovery and embrace connections in our local society. This mission is accompanied by 3 strategic goals that were developed 5 years ago, 10 years now, in the Strategic Planning Committee. I don't know if any of you were here. Just Jody was as a member of the HSA, and Beth as a parent, yeah. So we've been living these goals for the past 5 years approximately. So inquisitive learning is our first strategic goal. It's creating and establishing an inquiry-based framework that values, a keyword here, interest-driven learning environment. You'll see that in some of our action steps, where learners individually and collaboratively focus on identifying and analyzing and solving problems. So some of the key things that you'll see in our action steps is this being interest-driven, being an area in which we want our students as well as our teachers to collaboratively solve problems as inquisitive members of our community. Partnerships was the second strategic goal. Some keywords here were to create meaningful educational opportunities for students with local partners on multiple scales, local, not just local, but regional as well as global, and to really prepare them to become citizens with real-world connections. And we're going to build on this again this year. I think the board saw this last year primarily through passion projects and the civics project over at the middle school. But this is something that we're going to continue again this year. And then social awareness, some keywords in our social awareness goal. We want our learners to feel connected, sense of belonging, if you will, valued and secure in digital and non-digital learning environments. So that includes digital citizenship, as well as their connections in school with one another, with their peers. But really key here is promoting the individual's skills for their awareness of themselves and others, and their ability and the environment and the impact of their decisions. So as I launch into the action steps by school, I'm going to own the fact that not a whole lot will look different because this is our 5th and final year of the strategic plan. We've taken care of the large majority of our action steps. You'll see words and things like enhancing or monitoring or continuing throughout this presentation. And it's because we've laid the foundation and now we just need to build on that foundation and make it more systemic. So I'll start with our inquisitive learning goal. At the K-3 level, remember, inquisitive learning is about harnessing our students' interests. So we will continue with implementation of interest inventories. In fact, I wish I could remember what building or what classroom I was in where I saw a teacher working with her students to create an interest inventory to, 1, get to know them, 2, to try to find topics for perhaps passion projects later on in the school year. We will continue 3rd grade passion projects. Last year, there was an invitation that went out to parents to come and see their child's passion project. It was set up like a fair at White House and Three Bridges. And over the summer, we also have updated our data conversation guide, which enhances our teacher inquiry when they look at data. So it's a framework that gives them kind of a step-by-step guide on how to talk about data with one another, with the principal. It gives the principals a way to talk about data with me and with each other and with the supervisors. So we have that data conversation guide that we revised a little bit to use it again this year. Hollenbrook, we're going to continue the interest inventories as well as the 5th grade inquiry project, which was part of their research unit. It was embedded into language arts. Again, the conversation guide is going to be used at Hollenbrook School. And something of note at Hollenbrook as well, you approved at, I believe, the July or August board meeting, a $1,000 grant for our teachers to do an inquiry project. So 2 of our teachers are actually engaging in their own inquiry with the 5th grade teachers, and they have a $1,000 grant from the College of New Jersey to engage in that work this year. So they are leading some specific professional development with the 5th grade teachers here at Hollenbrook School. At the middle school, we're going to continue the 8th grade civics project and the fair. We're looking at potentially piloting new elective courses. So we have civics, which was new last year in computer science. There's some interest from some teachers to pilot some other electives courses that I've been talking with Mr. Charleston about and the teacher about as well. Some of that may traverse civic engagement and where we can get some outside individuals to come and help us with that particular course. More on that a little bit later as well. I know that Mr. Charleston and I have talked about plans to enhance the civics projects to include some sort of service learning, giving back to the community, not just presenting something of passion, but how can this turn into action? Much like we saw with, I believe, young Abigail Washuda actually got a bridge in Reddington reopened, right? How it could benefit our community. And again, the conversation guide was going to be part of that. We're going to enhance professional learning within the district and outside using our inquiry consultant to help us run workshops in terms of deeper levels of questions. We have an inquiry cohort of teachers that engage in inquiry projects beyond the 5th grade inquiry project, and we want to support those teacher experts in engaging in their own inquiries, which is the best professional development. Partnerships. We've achieved a lot over the past couple of years in terms of partnerships, and we really do harness as many partnerships as possible within the community and even beyond. So we have way more than 2 field trips per grade level that enhance the curriculum, but we're going to continue engaging in both online and virtual field trips and in-person field trips. We know that students really love in-person field trips as well. At White House, Three Bridges, and Hollenbrook, we've been able to partner students with local experts to help them to interview that local expert to help them develop the passion project, which has been a really nice way to engage in our community. And I mentioned this before, but at RMS, I'm going to skip over RMS. We'll definitely continue with field trips, but we're going to be working with community-based organizations through our civics courses, and we're going to look for opportunities for service learning. And district-wide, we're going to revisit and update that bank of partnerships that we've been monitoring for the past couple of years. And then social awareness, finally, a lot of these go through, you've seen these before, and they go through all of the buildings, but all 3 of the buildings have the Avita curriculum, which is infused into health and PE and the counselors use. We, at the K-3 level, have the bucket filling program at both White House and Three Bridges. This has been at White House for years, but it's been adopted by Three Bridges last year. And there are some programs that we're looking to sustain that are related to wellness and our sustainable Jersey and green initiatives. Same thing with Hollenbrook, it's kind of a repeat. New at RMS, we have a new behavioral health counselor. We also have the CAP program, which is going to traverse, I believe, grades 3, 5, and 6, and 7. We will continue Avita. I know that it's not going to be as much of a focal point, but Mr. Charleston got a lot of great feedback with the Leader in Me framework, and that's going to continue again this year. And we're going to look for opportunities related to wellness and include our Sustainable Jersey and Green Committee or green initiatives. District-wide, we're going to look at continuing SEL-related initiatives, podcasts, videos, events, Unity Day, the Great Kindness Challenge, some of the things that we did last year were very well received. We did a lot of work with training the DEI committee, training staff members over the past year. We're going to look at what our next short-term and long-range action plans might be in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And of course, we'll continue to sustain programs related to wellness and sustainable Jersey. So how do we know that we've achieved these goals? Some of the measures that we collect and complete, and then in turn get turned around and you review, even as part of my evaluation, are completion of projects. We have banks of resources that we've created. We have handbooks that we've created, professional development offerings that we offer throughout the school year. Any new protocols that are revised, curriculum documents that are updated, surveys or feedback forms either from staff or from parents, meeting minutes and notes, curriculum revisions, student growth objectives, which are monitored by the building principals, and then staff professional development plans. So in addition to our strategic goals, academic achievement is going to remain a focus, so this will be another embedded focal point for the year. Some new highlights here. Of course, NJSLA data is back, and you'll hear a lot more about that at the next board meeting in October. But new here, a couple of things. The sheltered English instruction model is a model that we've adopted in the district that assists English language learners in the general education classroom. We have teams of teachers that have been trained, and they're actually turnkeying the training to better support our English language learners in the classroom, general education classroom. So our English language learners are pulled out for ESL instruction, but we're providing additional resources for them within the general education classroom. We're doing that training for our teachers. We're going to focus, when it comes to academic achievement, while I mentioned all the building principals select their goals, their focal areas after they analyze the NJSLA and iReady diagnostic data. One of the things that we'll look into and focus on is math at RMS and some more long-term longitudinal achievement at 100 Central High School. Jody, that's for you. Little shout out. I had it in there before you mentioned it. So this is going to be a focal area that we'll look at with our oldest learners to determine how we're competing in terms of math. Some things that you've seen before, let me go skip down to the bottom. Another thing that's new, we're talking about schedule revisions to maximize instructional time. As we talked about, we've brokered a 5-year agreement with the RTEA, and that's going to facilitate some revisions to all 4 building schedules. And all 4 building schedules, principals are going to have committees to work on their new schedule that will be adopted and implemented for next year. So this year will be a year of collecting data, working with teachers, and then rolling out a new schedule for next year that will increase and enhance instructional time. So those are really the new things, but know that NJSLA data, the data conversation guide for instructional decision-making will continue. And on the agenda tonight, you'll see that we are going to partner with the YMCA once again to offer after-school enrichment opportunities for students that are based in academics, math and language arts core skills at grades K through 5. And that will be augmented from last year. We will offer both fall and spring courses through the YMCA this year through the ESSER grant. So some of the measurements that we'll keep track of for this year will be diagnostic data, the literally reading assessments, writing benchmarks, administrative goals, and then the NJSLA report, which is published in the fall and will report out to you in the fall. So that's really one time a year. Other work ahead. We are going to be do QSAC monitoring this year from the NJDOE. This is, between now and December, a pretty enormous lift on the administrative team and our support staff. It's a really, really large audit trail to make sure that we're in compliance with all state and federal laws and regulations. So we will be working on that in terms of preparing for our monitoring and making sure that the state sees what a high achieving and high performing district Reddington is on paper as much as we know we are. Well, we're going to be reintroducing climate surveys. So I know Mr. Tumolo has started to work on this. The state DOE has released their latest version of climate surveys that you can use, and it makes it really easy to analyze the data. So he's been looking into that since last year, and it's something we're going to roll out this year. And then school schedules to match the new RTA agreement, which I mentioned before. So there's one thing that I didn't mention, which I feel like could revise this entire plan, is we still don't know yet if we've received the preschool education aid. I don't have word. I was hoping that I could tell you something today, but I still haven't received anything from the DOE. I feel really strongly that preschool, should we get the funding will take a lot of administrative and staff resources and coordination, particularly the way in which we wrote the application. I would propose to the board that hopefully we'll know this week, and if we can be flexible, we can talk about this at another time, to kind of reprioritize some of these goals so that we can include preschool in those goals. And I'm also very cognizant of the fact that by the end of the year, you also have to do the superintendent evaluation using the goals. So like, if we have 3 strategic goals, an academic achievement goal, a preschool goal, a climate survey goal, like it just, a QSAC goal, I don't think all of them can be goals. I would want your feedback on if at all you want to change the evaluation process and what goals you want to have in there. An idea could be maybe putting all of the strategic goals under one goal umbrella, since we are in our final year, and maybe focusing on preschool and academics or something like that. So that's for a later date, but I was hoping that as I was doing this, finishing up Friday, I was like waiting for an email or a letter from the DOE because we were supposed to know about preschool then. When that didn't come, I was like, well, I want to move forward with a framework for you to at least consider, knowing that it could all change, because I think preschool is going to be something that absolutely is going to be priority. And that's everything I have. So I will take questions, thoughts.
Couple questions.
Yeah, please.
One, the Leader in Me program that you mentioned at RMS, is that
Yeah.
for staff or is that something that's in the curriculum?
It's for staff. So staff
for
has
staff.
read the book.
Okay.
Last year I did some activities with it, and it's kind of like a framework or mindset that the RMS staff are, yes, using with students, but it's like 7 keys to highly successful people, and there's kind of like mindset.
I'm familiar with it, I just wasn't sure if it was.
It's a staff book, but it's not a curriculum. It's something that we use for PD. Yeah.
Okay. My other question is with the preschool funding, will the grant cover all our costs for that?
For preschool?
Yeah.
That's how we wrote it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There shouldn't be additional preschool costs beyond what's in the grant, the way we wrote, I shouldn't call it a grant, the funding opportunity, the way we wrote the application. So when it comes to transportation, buying supplies, providing professional development, paying teachers, all of it's included in the 1.6 million that we've requested from the state. Yep. Yeah, Judy.
I had a thought.
Yeah.
The data conversation guide that you have been using, I'm just wondering, based on our conversation with Judy, is there a way to somehow use that to help the community understand the data that we have, is there a way to use that and be able to help us have a better conversation about data? Because it seems to have worked for the staff. It was just sort of like a thought. If we could somehow plow that knowledge forward, it might help.
Think about how we can do that.
I had a very similar comment, using the data conversation guide to help us solve the problem, how to get community input and finish that circle,
Okay.
close the loop. If there's a way that that can help us kind of focus on it.
I can bring it here and you can all fill it out and have a conversation
That's
about
why I
it.
was kind of wondering, like, maybe we
We can
can
help guide the
do it
conversation.
ourselves and, you know.
I can have it here for you too next month when we do the presentation. Like you can take notes, strengths, areas for growth, and what the data tells you. There's also things it doesn't tell you, questions, it can give you some kind of framework for how you organize your thoughts. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah, Beth?
I just wrote down two things as you were going through the presentation, and I'm just thinking back to strategic plan 5 years ago, and I do remember some survey that went out, and I just wonder if maybe to close that loop, I don't know if it's the same or similar questions to the climate survey, but maybe think about that, and there's a way to assess, where we started before strategic plan and kind of where we are now. That might be a whole conversation, but I'm just thinking you don't want multiple surveys going out, but if there's a way to, combine those or look at that. That was one thought. And then my other thought was, last year I know that there was an effort for parent involvement and education. I forget what that parent academy,
Yes.
is that what it was?
Yeah, back in March, yep.
And I thought that was really successful. And I was thinking back when my kids were much younger and the district switched over like iReady, there were, one of the superintendent chats, I think, was curriculum supervisors coming in and saying, oh, this is our new curriculum, and just really kind of having a conversation about what it looks like, how a parent can support that. And I just wonder if maybe, bringing that back for maybe the parents who haven't been to district for a long time, so they know what curriculum we're using. And I just was wondering if, the parent outreach stuff was still part of this.
There's a couple events that I know are really successful with getting parents here. We had even more parents come to the new family welcome, the superintendent welcome that I did on August 30th, right before school. It's mostly kindergarten parents, but they come, they meet me, they meet the HSA, and it was great. Like last year it was like 20 people, this year it was like 25 or 30, like it was a lot larger. So like we have a captive audience right there, and it's mostly like new parents to the district. I know we had a great captive audience in the parent academy. I feel like once we went into breakout rooms, I feel like we lost some parents because they were here, they saw their kids perform or their kids present, and then probably left. I wonder if we could restructure that. I don't know how. I came to, on the first day of school, the HSA had their welcome back for all homeroom parents. And I was like, why don't they come like this when I have a meeting, right? It was great. It was like, I don't know, this room was filled like 60 people or something like that. It was amazing. We have a captive audience there too, parents that are, engaged in the community. So I just had some thoughts about like, how can we use those opportunities? But yeah, I'll keep thinking on other ways that we can say, like, this is something that you might want information about. I'm ready to, or this new curriculum, or how we do science instructions, things like that. Thanks. Anything else? Okay. I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce Jason to come up, and he's going to walk you through our summer capital projects with some mostly pictures of all the work we did this summer. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Matt. Very efficient. So I'm going to share what we've done over the course of the summer, but to give background, for capital projects, we maintain our own reserves. So we don't go out to the taxpayers and ask for more money in referendums. We haven't seen a referendum in Bennington Township before. The entire time I've been in the district, which is 5 years, and prior to that. And that's a testament to the budgeting process that the board undertakes, as well as the taxpayers input when we send out the tax cards relating to the budget. But how do we do capital projects? We look at our long-range facilities plan, we plan for that, and that's prioritized projects, but we also get feedback from everyone. So I have a running tally of a list of ideas, thoughts that are sent to me over the course of the year, and that's from various people. I mean, I get emails from the community, township, HSA, athletic director, anyone that really has an idea sends it to me, and I just put it on the list. And the way we structure things is we have capital reserves, we also have maintenance reserves, we also have emergency reserves. And those buckets detail different things. Capital reserves are for very large projects, over $1 million, $500,000. Maintenance projects are really for those ideas that come up from the staff, and from the HSA, and from the community that are smaller in nature, maybe like 30 grand, 20 grand, things that enhance district long-term to help staff or students. And then emergency reserve is really for security. So when we're doing safety and security, which is one of the main focuses besides student learning, that money can come from emergency reserves. So when we go through the audit in December, the people in the finance committee get to see those buckets, but we've been able to replenish those based on fiscal prudence. So list of projects, we try to do things as local as possible and partner with local officials. So DPW helps us with projects, using backhoes, things like that. We use local vendors. So one of the vendors who's been really instrumental has been Arden's on Route 22. They've done partner with us to do 2 gardens over the past 2 years. The Township of Readington has also given us grants and partnered with us to access DEP grants for rain gardens at 2 of our schools. So we do a lot of partnerships and try to find free money. So that way we don't have to impact the taxpayers and also save our money in reserves. This is a list of general projects we've done. And instead of reading all of these, I'm just going to start showing you pictures. But we've done around 30 projects this summer. And I would say that about 80% are done. We still have some left over. But most of the projects that you see on this list are complete at this point. But there are some that are not finished. So big aspect of things that are not finished is IT. You see the computer chip shortage, you've heard about that and you're like, okay, the pandemic's over, stop making excuses. But I can keep using that because we cannot get things. That's why I have Matt here to back me up. And a lot of our IT projects are delayed because of components that are manufactured in Asia and have to be imported. Labor is a major issue. Manufacturing, they're not running on full capacity, they're not running all their shifts, so you still have that delay to get things, which are critical components to finishing those projects. A good example of that is RMS HVAC replacement. So we are fully air conditioned throughout the entire district, except for a few gyms, one of which is at RMS. So when we do the roof, we said, let's see if we can upgrade it and provide air conditioning to that one gym that doesn't have it, in addition to the heat that was already there. So we do a purpose. Lead time on HVAC units are 10 to 12 months. So that has delayed that project, but that gives you an example of the delays that we have to deal with. So right now, we are actually planning for next summer, and the last board meeting actually approved moving forward with a major project next summer, and we're currently working on doing that bid and creating that bid to order the HVAC for next summer, because that's how long the lead time is. We're doing a lot of security upgrades. I won't go through those in details, but we talk about that in personnel as well as finance over the course of the year, and we're doing those over phases. And lastly, but not least, solar expansion. That is occurring. That has been very successful. About 40% of our electric is generated by solar on fields in the back of the building, on the roof, in front of RMS. We are planning to expand that to the maximum extent possible under state law. And with future upgrades, we might get close to net zero impact for electric. The nice thing about electric and solar is that the solar panels are warranted for 25 years, but our agreements don't cost the taxpayer any money. And we pay it off over 15 years by the electricity that generates via the PPA. So in year 16, we have free energy. So it's a good thing for the budget, it's a good thing for the environment, and it doesn't cost taxpayers any money. It also provides student programming because we get curriculum materials to share with students and do projects like that. So enough talk. Let's look at some photos. Bathroom additions. So we did 3 bathroom additions at the elementary schools. This was for specific student needs that we needed in those buildings. And also dual purpose. If you get a preschool grant, you need bathrooms. You got double use out of one construction project. So this is an example of one. They all look very similar. So each, but it was like it was never there. I mean, you would never know that that was constructed in one. Beautiful picture of the room. Take it all in. You'll see we have the new roof on the gym. That's done. We also did a new roof over the art room, which is on the far right of the right picture. And I made sure to include solar panels just to make Jody happy. So
Made you happy a lot tonight.
but the nice thing about the roof is we were able to do the Homburg roof over 3 years without impacting taxpayers. We're now starting the RMS roof, which is the oldest roof and is on our prioritization of our long-range facilities. Something that wasn't budgeted for, but we did accomplish is redoing the people services offices. We also created a conference room so that way there's a specific space for parents to meet with the child study team to go over student needs and collaborate on that effort. So this is just a picture of their new spaces. This is the unfinished conference room. Furniture is coming next week. And then this is the work of Arvin's on Route 22. They are amazing. They redid Three Bridges Gardens, and if you're in Three Bridges, gorgeous sensory garden there. The nice thing about this project is we partnered with Rutgers Master Gardeners, including a former board member and a former teacher. So they helped design it. They worked on the specific soil that we sourced for the students. And they work with Dr. DeRosa on curriculum throughout the year. So there is a lot of different aspects of that. We redid all the staff lounges. So each staff lounge had a committee in their buildings and a representative to design what they might want. So we ended up doing new cabinetry, new furniture. It's really whatever they designed and wanted. And we did our best to make that happen. We were still waiting on some equipment for some of them, but this is the general pictures of them as they currently are. So this is Hollenbrook. White House is completely done. Three Bridges, this is the new cabinetry, and the chairs are coming. This is RMS 1 and 2. This is a really nice one because you overlook the gardens and it's got beautiful sunlight. We also put TVs in each of them, which you can stream instantly like this from a computer. So staff can go in there, they can collaborate for their open period, have a coffee, and they can stream directly from the computer. This is the second one. You can see there's still some painting that needs to be done, and the refrigerators are the old refrigerators, so there's still some work at RMS. We also did water bottle filling stations. So we redid all of RMS critical areas with water bottle filling stations that are cooled. So the principal there went around to the different wings, identified where it would be best suited, and we installed them everywhere, including the cafeteria, to encourage students to obviously not be using plastic water bottles. LED lighting. So we actually got a grant a couple of years ago that paid for 80% of our cost costs for LED lighting at the elementary schools. Because of how that program runs, RMS and Holland didn't qualify, but we are doing this based on our own volition. And we should have all our LED lights by the end of next summer. So this is the second to last. Next summer will be the last. And then our entire district will be on LEDs, which is a very quick payback period from an electric standpoint. Some students that came back from RMS said that it's like sunlight.
Yeah.
in a hallway, so I thought that was a good comment. Some other photos, we did some painting at RMS. We've been doing that over the past couple of years. The lockers were painted a couple of years ago. Now our staff is painting the hallways. We're getting new padding for the gym at the middle school. And something that the principal recently did was displaying Student of the Month and having efforts related to that, which I thought was very nice. That's the right photo. That's as soon as you walk the building. This is the RMS outdoor furniture. We redid some of the gardens there last year, so this is just finishing that effort. This is where students can have lunch, but also they can also have classroom space on the right side by sitting on the ledges and things like that. We create a space for transportation department as well. So transportation is in front of RMS. They can go into the staff lounge at RMS, but they like sitting outside. Just the nature of they're on a bus, they're driving around, they're exploring. So they like sitting outside. We make sure we created a concrete pad for them. Any staff can use it, but we specifically did because that's what they want. And staff retention improvement is one of our priorities. One aspect of security that I can share publicly is our 4 police officers go around daily and check all the doors. And as part of that, if a door is recognized as not fully latching or there's an issue that they think needs improvement, simply replace the door or we fix it. So this is an example of doors that were fixed or had new locks that were more secure installed, as well as swipe locations to allow for easier access by staff in critical locations, depending on where the students are outside. So we also looked at swipe locations and how staff would get back into the building. Concrete, beautiful picture of concrete, but we actually had, we have a safety committee that meets quarterly. They review things on what incidents occurred to both staff and students, and then create projects based on safety needs. This is a good example of that. We had 2 instances where people got hurt on this concrete. And it was because if you look at the old concrete, it used to be a triangle on the left side. And people would come off the triangle onto the grass and twist around, bend their knee. And we ended up redoing the format of how that walkway functions. So that way there would be less people injuring themselves. White House Art Room was part of a CAT project. So we have a brand new art teacher at White House. So she's very excited to organize however she likes. So she was very happy with that. And this is just a quote from Norman Palmer. And I'll take any questions that you may have.
I love all the pictures. It really helps, see all the work that we were talking about. Thank you.
So thank you, and I will turn it back over to you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, a reminder for everyone to use their microphone because that's loud and we have an audience, so just a reminder. We are now open to the public, limited to action items on the agenda.
Tom Curtis, White House Station. I came a little late to the meeting. I was just curious who the visitor was and what the purpose was. And then second question related to the budget. Looking at the property tax bill, it indicates that education is about 65% of the property tax. How does that break down related to Reddington School versus, say, what goes toward the county and the high school. So those are my two questions.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. I can answer the first question. The guest speaker was Judy Wilson. She's a consultant who we brought in to do a board training. So basically, we had done a board evaluation, self-evaluation.
Right.
She walked through that and then helped us focus on some of our areas that we can improve on. And I don't know if we can answer the property tax question now, or we need to get back to Mr. Curtis.
No, so the property taxes in New Jersey are functioned on how we fund school education. New Jersey derives their taxes for school at the local level versus other states will do it at a county or the state level. So when there's protests or things like that, you'll see a lot of staff members go to the governor's building or the legislative building, such as like in Chicago or in Florida. Versus here, the state of New Jersey doesn't directly fund most of our education, so it's funded at the local level, which is why New Jersey has higher tax bills at the local level. About half of what you're talking about with the 60% is our bill. The other half would be the high school. The remaining amount that you have beyond that, a good portion of that is the county, and then usually the smallest sliver is the local township.
Now, does any funding come from the state to, maybe not our municipality, but to any municipalities?
Yes, there is some, and that's annual. It's about 3 to 4%.
Thank you.
All right. And there is no comments online, right, Mrs. Wolf?
No comments in the chat.
Okay. I think that was the only comment from the public, right? Okay. All right, moving on to correspondence. We had one email from CZ regarding a cell tower study. Moving on to board action, approval of administrative minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt 1.01?
So move that.
Second?
Second, Camille?
Any questions or comments? Not hearing any. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Betterman,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mrs. Pogorski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sosiello,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes. Approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt 2.01 through 2.02?
So move that.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the minutes? All right, can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Betterman,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Abstain.
Mrs. Pogorski,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Abstain.
Dr. Sosiello,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Passes.
Moving on to finance facilities, can I get a motion to adopt 3.01 through 3.11?
So move that.
Second, Carolyn.
We did not have a committee report, correct? Correct. Any questions or comments?
I did have one question that I asked Dr. Hart and Jason ahead of time, and I thought it might be good to just review. It was about the shared services agreement between the Bennington Township Board of Ed and law enforcement officials, 3.07. And my question was just, how does this agreement interact with the memorandum that we have, memorandum of agreement, right?
Yep.
And so I just think that that's good information to share with everybody. Would you mind just answering that?
No, I'm gonna bring up my response.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just
Okay.
thought it was very helpful for me and my,
Yeah.
everyone and the public to understand.
So the MOA between the Board of Education and law enforcement is a different document than the shared services agreement between the Board of Education and the Township Committee. So I'll start with the latter, right? The one that we're approving tonight, which is the shared services agreement between Bennington Township and law enforcement. So this is the agreement that we've engaged in with the Township Committee to supply the 4 police officers, 1 for each one of our schools. It's in this agreement that we come to terms of what their responsibilities are, what they provide us, and how much money we pay to them. So that agreement is totally separate. the memorandum of agreement between law enforcement in general and the Board of Education is a state-driven memorandum of agreement that they derive that talks about what kind of exchange of information needs to happen in cooperation between the Board of Education and local law enforcement in the event there's an investigation or something along those lines. And we stopped short of going any further into differentiating the difference because I know the state is revising the MOA and it hasn't been released yet, but that's something that we put on usually our November board agenda for you to approve. And we'll take any, discussion or changes in finance and then we'll bring it to the full board. So one agreement is just ours, it's local, that's what we're approving tonight. It's what puts our 4 officers in the district. The other agreement is state-driven, required by the state, and it talks about what kind of exchange of information should happen between law enforcement and the board when it comes time to conduct an investigation of sorts.
All right, and I had some information regarding 3.10. This is regarding the request for proposal for disposal and recycling collection. I would like to make a motion to postpone it to the October Board of Ed meeting so that we can discuss this item further in Finance Committee. This is something that we've talked about earlier in the year about doing an agreement with the township. And before we go forward with that, I would like to finalize if we can get anything done with the township. So I make the motion. Can I get a second? To postpone to the October Board of Ed meetings.
So moved, seconded.
And should we have to vote on this separate? So we can get a roll call on this one?
Ms. Zimmerman,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sosial,
Yes.
Ms. Hamel,
Yes.
passes.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to say that I just want to inform the board too, if that doesn't impact our ability to go out or anything like this. This won't mean that our trash won't be picked up. Like we want to do some coordination before we decide to go out to bid. So this doesn't delay anything. We're okay by doing this. I know Carol and Jason were talking before the meeting as well. So just know we still have trash collection. Don't worry.
Thank you. All right, can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Zimmerman,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski, abstained. Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sosial,
Yes.
Ms. Hamel,
Yes.
passes.
All right, moving on to education technology. Can I get a motion to adopt 4.01 through 4.06?
So moved, Beth.
Second from you.
And we had a committee report? No, okay. I didn't think so, but I thought you were holding something. All right, any questions or comments on the action items?
I had a question on that. On 4.001, the sustainability curriculum, is that one lesson per subject?
Not necessarily. It's not designed to be like that. It's supposed to be resources for teachers to choose from to meet different standards. It's not one lesson. It's not anything like that.
So what's listed in there, are those the actual lessons? Like the actual books that will be read? Like is that?
Yeah, there's samples that they can pick from. They don't have to pick all of them. Yeah,
Right,
teachers,
it's a resource document.
Okay, thank you.
they don't have to teach all of it. There's a lot in there, so teachers can pick and choose.
I found it interesting to see the different ways that, you like a math problem throughout the different grades of how you just, here's a question about sea level, for example, square footage of dirt. It was interesting that those were different math problems it just dealt with, I thought. Any other questions or comments?
Question on 4.04. Dr. Hart, you mentioned that this year the YMCA would be fall and spring. Are the 5 clubs listed, are they both all fall and spring, or how will that?
Great question. The 5 clubs that are listed will run first in the fall, and then the same clubs will run again in the spring to give the maximum amount of students opportunity to take clubs either in the fall or the spring, the same club, right? Like if their friend who's a 4th grader took Minecraft STEAM in the fall, maybe a child wants to sign up for it in the spring. The only slight difference is we have no clubs that we're offering to kindergarten in the fall. We'll include kindergarten in the spring clubs. It's just too early for kindergarten. We feel like developmentally to be after school for an additional hour.
Understood.
Yep.
Thank you.
So is this first through third grade?
First through fifth.
First through fifth.
Like Dream Through STEAM, I want to say is grades 2, 3. Give me a second, I can bring it up if you want me to.
I was just curious, it doesn't include RMS though.
It does not, that is correct.
Okay.
Do you want the grade levels? I'll give them to you.
Since you're looking.
And I'll just mention while he's looking that RMS has the most amount of clubs out of all the schools.
Oh, yeah. But these are specifically, these clubs are specific, are these ones that are specifically to address math and English?
Correct. Dream Through STEAM, there's grades 1 and 2. Bookworms will be offered to grades 1 through 3. STEAM Survivor, grades 2 and 3. The Right Stuff, grade 4. Minecraft STEAM, grades 4 and 5.
Thank you.
And then that's fall. That'll change in the spring when we include kindergarten. And we're thinking about, we haven't done it yet, but we're thinking about maybe like a think tank or like STEAM with Legos club.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All right, can I get a roll call, please?
Stone,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski,
Abstain.
Ms. Ryan,
No to 4.01, yes to everything else.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Susilo,
Yes.
Ms. Sample,
Yes.
passes.
All right, moving on to personnel. Can I get a motion to adopt 5.01 through 5.11?
So move back.
Second. No. Any questions or comments on the action items? All right, can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Bowman,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Susilo,
Yes.
Ms. Sample,
Yes.
passes.
Moving on to communication, can I get a motion to adopt 6.01 through 6.03?
So move back.
Second, Jennifer.
And no committee report, right?
We did.
Oh, you did, that's right.
So the committee met on August 30th. We had sick leave updates for policy 164.01 sick leave. PL 2023 C95 was signed into law on July 3rd, 2023, which provides statutes NJSA 18A 30-1 and NJSA 18A 30-4 that address the requirements of sick leave for school district employees. The revisions to statute significantly expand the scope of allowable uses of sick leave for school district employees. The revisions to statute establish provisions for a board to require certification, reasonable documentation, and advance notice of requests for sick leave. In response to these recent revisions, Strauss Esme created one new policy and one new regulation guide to cover all school employees as the revisions to statute affect all employees in the school district equally. Policy and regulation guide 1642.01 have been revised to align with the new statutory requirements. We confirmed that FMLA would run concurrently to paid sick leave where FMLA is applicable, and the corresponding reg is listed as well. Topic 2, pronoun updates in code, statute, and policy was tabled with the request of putting the topic forth on a future agenda when all committee members are present. Our third item was advocacy. The committee brainstormed topics for advocacy, including utilizing the Hunterdon County School Boards Association as a forum for advocacy, advocating to Hunterdon Central to provide a forum for board members and administration to discuss topics affecting the district, including challenges and opportunities, and continuing to advocate for strong pension benefits for our teachers, including the recommendation that former teachers be able to re-enter the pension program in the tier they were previously in, and/or advocate for other retention tools. The committee expressed a commitment to advocate for the needs of Readington students and will solicit input from the full board. Our fourth topic was the school calendar. Due to the settled teacher's contract, the calendar has an addition of February 16th as a half day for professional development. And the committee requested that the district review potential iterations of the future school calendar to review on a future agenda. The committee reviewed draft communication plan with proposed upcoming articles for September as Welcome Back to School from Dr. Hart and Summer Enrichment Reflections from Ms. Creel and Ms. Ogden. And for October, facilities capital projects completed this past summer and cost savings from Mr. Bone and planned HSA events for the year from Ms. Sally. Note that Readington News has suspended publication. The district is continuing to explore new ways to reach all residents. The committee discussed the use of paid mailings to reach residents who may not have children in the district who receive Genesis Bless. Agenda items are policy 1642.01 and the school calendar. Our next committee meeting is scheduled for October 12th at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf. Regarding the Readington News, I wonder if the township does any, if they would look into doing any, monthly mailing out to the community, if that's something that we could participate in. Sorry.
Like a newsletter?
Yeah.
Yeah, township should have the same issue. So
Right.
Maybe they have some.
Any other questions? Sorry.
I did email, last I heard, I think I told the committee last I heard from the Readington News, they were suspending publication at least for September. It looks like they're gonna suspend for October as well. So I don't know if they're gonna go to a quarterly publication. I don't know what they're thinking, but I know that for at least the next couple of months, we won't have the Readington News. I was kind of hopeful that, they maybe would just suspend for the summer in September and then we'd be back up and running knowing that, we would contribute, but it doesn't appear that way so far. So we'll see. I'll keep checking in with them.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to make a comment to the full board. If you have suggestions for advocacy or direction you'd like to give to the committee to pursue, you can send me an email and then we'll look to put it on a future agenda.
Thank you. All right, can I get a roll call?
Ms. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Bagorski,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Cecile,
Yes.
Ms. Hinkle.
Yes.
Passes.
All right, unfinished business. Jason needs to know by September 20th or the 18th,
Monday if you can.
Monday, if you are planning on attending. And I believe you sent an email that the administration was planning on going Monday and Tuesday evenings, because that was the bulk of the trainings. And there are some vendors who have activities planned in addition to the trainings during the day. Any other unfinished business? All right, any new business? Mrs. Betterman?
I don't like it.
Use Jason's.
I did not break it. I just had one thing. The Hunterdon County School Board Association is having their county meeting, the first one of the year, on Thursday, September 28th. You're able to join in person or remotely, so you have two options to join. But the reason I'm pointing this out is because their subject that they're going to discuss is advocacy. And so I thought it might be very relevant for us. There's no cost to it because we're members. You just have to sign up, register ahead of time.
Thank you. Any other new business? All right, we are now open to the public. Anything on or off the agenda?
6 o'clock. I think 7 if you do it online.
Ellen Pinto, Readington Township. I just had a quick question regarding the shared services agreement. Do we have 4 officers this year for offers to have one at each school? Were we able to fill those positions for this school year?
Thank you, Mrs. DePinto. Any other questions or comments? Is there anything online?
No comments.
All right, public comment is closed.
Yes, and we're thrilled. We have all four. We're fully staffed. Yeah.
We made you wait for it.
I shook my head, right? We're good.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move Beth. Second Carolyn.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Bevan,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Ms. Pogorski,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Cecile,
Yes.
Ms. Epple.
Yes. 8:18, just switched. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Have a wonderful evening, and good luck for the rest of September, school year. You too, Mr. Curtis.